Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a run at one of the biggest questions there is, really. Why do societies rise,
Yeah.
and why do they eventually fall?
It's a huge question. And the sources you've got there, they're all part of this one professor's attempt to build a single overarching model for societal collapse.
A huge stack of them. And they're not easy reading. Very theoretical.
They are, but the mission today is pretty simple. We're here to distill that whole academic framework into something you can actually use, like a lens to see the world.
Right.
And we're going to start exactly where the professor does. Not with, ancient Rome or something, but with the immediate evidence, the signs that suggest a global decline might already be happening.
And that's what makes this feel so urgent. This isn't just a history lesson. The source material is basically arguing that our world, right now, is showing all the classic symptoms. So let's start right there.
Okay, so the symptoms.
Yeah, let's look at what the professor's research flags as the immediate signs. If you just scan the globe, it seems like they're breaking it down into a few main areas. External conflict, the environment.
And then internal economic and social decay. Those are the big ones.
So on the external front, it's pretty obvious. The analysis points to conflict everywhere. Ukraine, the Middle East, growing friction in Southeast Asia.
And it even flags things that seem, well, almost unthinkable. The source mentions the potential for U.S. troops being sent into places like Mexico or Venezuela.
Seriously, why?
Because their own internal instability could spill over the border. It's this idea of spreading chaos.
And that's tied into environmental decay, too. It's not just climate change in the abstract.
No, it's more tangible. It's the sense that our air, our water, our land, it's all becoming functionally toxic. It's leading to a general decline in, our collective health. These are the big, visible wounds on the planet.
Okay, but the sources seem to argue the internal signs are maybe even more important.
They're critical.
Yeah.
Because they signal a loss of cohesion. Let's start with, say, the labor market. You've got rising unemployment, but at the same time, a really sharp decline in people's attitude toward work.
That's the part that seems so contradictory. Prices are going up, you'd think people would be more motivated to work, not less.
You would think so, but they point to two specific things. In China, there's this concept called Bailin.
Bailin.
Yeah, it translates roughly to let it rot, or lying flat. It's this whole philosophy of doing the absolute bare minimum.
Like quiet quitting here in the West.
Exactly like quiet quitting. It's this widespread feeling that hard work just doesn't pay off anymore, so they're withdrawing. They're not investing their life energy into the system.
That withdrawal of energy.
Yeah.
That must connect to the population itself, right? To the most basic resource.
It does, and the source material is adamant on this point. It says the single most important sign of decline is the rapid global drop in birth rates.
The most important.
The most important. If the future refuses to reproduce itself, if young people don't want to get married and have kids, then the society is, for all intents and purposes, dying. It doesn't matter how strong your military is today.
And this is happening everywhere.
Almost everywhere. There are a couple of tiny exceptions, like Israel and Georgia, but for every major society, it's a steep, steep downward trend.
And then economically, the signs are pretty grim. You have massive inflation, so prices are up.
But real wages are falling, which means, for the average person, the standard of living is actively going down.
And the debt.
Astronomical,
Yeah.
both public and private. The sources say governments everywhere are in a fiscal crisis. They're spending way more than they take in. They even flag huge pension problems hitting in the next, 5 to 10 years?
It's a demographic time bomb.
It is. And on top of all that, you just have this collapse in social trust. People are more pessimistic. They have lower trust in institutions and their neighbors. Stress and anxiety are through the roof.
This lack of cohesion is key, isn't it? The source even brings up migration.
It does. And we should be clear, we're just reporting on the theory's logic here, not debating policy.
Of course.
But the model explicitly cites mass migration in the West as a sign of decline because, in its view, it can reduce social cohesion and potentially lower the standard of living for native workers. It's used as a specific marker for that loss of social trust.
So if you flip it around, a society on the rise would have high trust, savings, optimism, high birth rates.
All the opposites, yes. And the global picture right now looks like the mirror image of that. Low cohesion, radical self-interest.
Which brings us to the big question. Why? Let's get into the first major theory, which starts with the economy itself.
Okay, theory number one is financialization. It draws a lot from economists like Thomas Piketty.
Right.
And it basically describes capitalism moving through three phases. First, there's consumer capitalism. The focus there is on making real wealth. physical things, actual services.
The phase where manufacturing really mattered.
Precisely. But then it transitions into financial capitalism, and the focus shifts from making things to making money. Investment, stock markets, debt.
And the third phase.
Monopoly capitalism. That's where a few massive companies figure out it's way more profitable to just kill the competition than it is to innovate.
And the source claims the engine driving this is a really simple, almost irresistible incentive.
It all comes down to the growth rates. Piketty's work suggests the real economy making stuff grows at maybe, 2% a year? It's slow.
Okay.
But the financial economy speculation, investment grows way faster, around 5%.
Ah, so that's the core of it, if you're an ambitious person with some money.
Exactly. You could start a real business, a restaurant, say, create real wealth and make, I don't know, $20,000 a year.
Or you could just play the stock market with that same money and make $50,000. Why would you ever bother with the real economy?
The model says you wouldn't. And if enough smart, ambitious people make that choice, the whole society just stops generating real wealth. It leads directly to the debt and unemployment we see. The system itself rewards abstraction over reality.
That's a powerful economic argument. But money and ambition don't exist in a vacuum, which leads us to the second theory, elite overproduction. This one's about power and status.
Right. This is the work of Peter Turchin. He looked at huge collapses, like the Roman Empire, the French Revolution.
What did you find?
He found that societies tend to collapse when you have too many powerful, ambitious people all fighting for too few top jobs.
I remember the source used a really chilling illustration for this, the rat utopia experiment.
That's the one, by James B. Calhoun. He created this perfect rat environment, unlimited food, unlimited water, no predators.
It thrived, right?
No, they always ended up killing each other,
Right.
every single time.
But why? If they had everything they needed.
Because they weren't fighting for food, they were fighting for status. And status is a zero-sum game. And crucially, the container was sealed. The losers couldn't just leave and start a new colony somewhere else, so the conflict just escalated until the whole population collapsed.
So the problem isn't scarcity. It's having too many elites trapped in the same system, all chasing the same few positions at the top.
Exactly. Think about it today. You have top universities, Peking, Tsinghua, Harvard, Yale, just churning out thousands of elite graduates who all expect to be in charge. But there aren't enough positions. So this overproduction creates this intense internal struggle. And Turchin's work shows that this, historically, leads to war or revolution.
Okay, so we have an abstract economy and warring elites. Now let's add the third theory, the civilizational life cycle, which basically says this whole process is natural and unavoidable. This is Oswald Spengler's idea.
Yeah, Spengler argued that civilizations are like organisms. They have a life cycle. They're born, they grow, they mature, and then they die.
And he mapped this through the way people live, right? From the village to the city.
Exactly. He saw 4 stages: village to town to city, and finally to the megacity. And the megacity is the point of death.
So what defines that early stage, the village?
Simplicity. High trust, a collective mindset. Hard work is valued. And birth rates are really high because, well, children are an asset. They're free labor for the family and the community.
And the journey from that village to the megacity is basically a journey into abstraction. You become more and more removed from reality.
Totally removed. In the village, you know where your food comes from. In the megacity, you have no idea. And that whole transition is driven by money, the ultimate abstraction, which replaces tradition, relationships, and emotion as the thing that holds society together.
And that abstraction, that focus on money, leads to radical individualism.
That's the term he uses, yes. Radical individualism, a total focus on personal pleasure.
It's the megacity resident.
Is unwilling to work hard. They rely on immigrants for essential labor. They're unwilling to have children. The logic is totally self-serving. Why have kids to take care of you when you're old? If you get sick, you just pay a doctor. Society becomes completely atomized, and Spengler says that is the death of a civilization.
And the source makes this really stark claim that our modern hubs, Beijing, D.C., New York, London, they are already these mega cities.
Yeah.
That the cycle is basically irreversible.
Yes.
But what about an external threat? I mean, wouldn't something huge like an alien invasion force everyone to unite?
The professor's model, based on history, says absolutely not.
Yeah.
No. Once a society gets that selfish, that atomized, it loses the ability to cooperate. Factions would immediately try to cut a deal with the aliens to get an advantage over their rivals. The cohesion is just gone.
That is a genuinely disturbing thought. Okay, so let's pull these three ideas together. Financialization, elite overproduction,
Yeah.
and the life cycle into the big structural model, the one that uses the metaphor of a corporation. This is where it all clicks into place.
Right. So if society is a corporation, at the very top you have the owners. We're talking maybe 10 to 100 elite families. The source says something like 200 families basically controlled the whole Roman Empire.
And their main goal is just to hold on to and pass down their power.
Exactly. That's why they focus so much on strategic marriages and having lots of children. It's about dynasty.
And these owners control things through what the source calls the nexus of power.
Which is a kind of triumvirate. You have finance, so central banking. You have intelligence, spies. And the third pillar is religion.
But it defines religion in a modern way, right, as science and technology.
Yes, that's a key point. It's not about God. It's about whatever institution controls the moral narrative, what dictates right and wrong. Today, that's often expertise framed as infallible truth. And this nexus controls everything else: the military, media, government, schools.
Okay, so below the owners, you have the managers. The professional managerial class, or PMC.
Your doctors, lawyers, professors, bureaucrats, the educated middle class.
And at the bottom, the workers. The people who actually generate all the wealth and energy for the system.
And if you map the health of a society onto that structure, it becomes really clear. The rise phase is all about consent.
Meaning?
The system is open, meritocratic. The owners let the managers incentivize the workers, maybe through things like democracy and the promise of upward mobility. Criticism is actually welcomed because it makes the system better.
But then elite overproduction kicks in, and the owner's own kids start wanting a piece of the pie, and we shift into the decline phase. This one is marked by deception.
Right. And the managers, who are afraid of losing their comfortable jobs, they start engaging in what's called rent-seeking behavior.
Which is what, exactly?
It's extracting wealth without creating any value. Think of a manager who creates tons of useless paperwork just to justify their salary, or a lawyer who lobbies to protect a failing industry.
So the managers start squeezing the workers and creating all this bureaucracy just to protect their own positions and keep the status quo.
They're masking their own lack of productivity. And this just spirals downward until you hit the final phase, the collapse phase, driven by coercion.
The elite infighting gets so bad that the owners split into competing factions.
And those factions pull in parts of the middle class and the workers, which leads directly to civil war or revolution.
And this is the part the model warns about. The collapse itself is often very sudden. It's not a slow decline at the end, it's a cliff.
It's triggered by external shocks, a perfect storm of crises, plague, drought, war, revolution, all hitting at once.
Why so sudden, though?
It's terrifyingly simple. In that final authoritarian phase, the leadership sees any critic as an enemy. No one is allowed to point out the system's flaws, so the society becomes incredibly brittle, completely unprepared for that cascade of crises when it finally comes.
And there's that twist about foreign wars. The model argues invasions usually don't just happen because some outside country sees a weakness.
No, it argues they usually start because one of the internal elite factions actually invites mercenaries in to help them in their power struggle. And the mercenaries, seeing how rotten the whole system is, just take over for themselves.
It shows that the loyalty of the elite is to their own faction, not to the nation itself.
Their status comes first.
So given this whole model, the sources make five very explicit and pretty chilling predictions for the Western world over the next 5 to 20 years.
First, a sharp decline in democracy and freedom, a move toward overt authoritarianism, coercion.
Second, a structural economic collapse,
Yeah.
driven by that financial abstraction and people just being unwilling to work hard for less and less reward.
Third, an increase in migration, as governments try to replace a native population that's checking out of the labor market.
Fourth, severe civil conflict. And fifth, stupid foreign wars.
Used as a necessary distraction. The logic is cold, but clear. For the elite, the choice is often between a foreign war and a domestic revolution. And the model argues that war is structurally the preferred option. It gets rid of your disaffected young men and distracts everyone else.
And we have to stress, this is the theory's power logic we're reporting on.
Absolutely. It's an analysis of incentives, not a moral judgment.
So if you step back from it all, the big takeaway from this whole model is that internal cohesion, trust, motivation, that's the real measure of a society's health,
Mm,
much more than GDP or military power.
that's it. Once that internal trust is gone, the whole mechanism of collapse is already in motion. Once you reach that atomized, individualistic megacity stage, you're structurally incapable of uniting to face any real challenge.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to think about. If this trend towards abstraction and selfishness is structurally baked into the system, and if even an existential external threat can't force people to unite, what single internal action could possibly reverse that? What could restore genuine cohesion and trust across the owners, the managers, and the workers all at once?
That's the challenge the model leaves you with.
Try using this framework to analyze the news you see this week. We'll talk to you next time.